This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. It's Tuesday. I said we weren't taping another one this week, but there's just too much NBA going on. Zach Lowe and I were talking yesterday, and we decided to do a podcast. How are you? Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you, too.
Let's just start with Josh Smith, since that's one of the weirdest things that's happened in a while. I can't remember exactly this situation happening before where a team says, here, just go. We're paying you. We're not going to save any money. It doesn't help our cap. Just please leave. Just go. I don't remember this ever happening before.
Ooh, there have been times where like teams banished guys away from the team, but never, always with the goal of trading them or finding a way to make them go away without, stretching the cap hit out like this. Yeah, this is crazy, man. This lit up the holiday season.
The NBA has really managed to do something interesting every 3 or 4 days for 2.5 straight months, basically. Just like every time you think it's starting to die down, something else weird happens. It's a weird season. Weird, entertaining, the whole thing. But we knew Stan and Josh Smith were not a match made in heaven. We made jokes about it before the season. Jalen and I did our Detroit preview. We had an animation of Stan's head blowing up. Like, this was a match made in hell, or marriage made in hell. And the crazy thing to me is Josh Smith is actually going to make more money than he would have had he just done well with this contract. He actually has a chance now to add financial value to his life based on his Detroit experience. Can you believe that?
I think that's true, right? I mean, Detroit gets a little bit of a set-off, but I think the set-off applies to their cap and not to like his actual salary. So I think he will get to make additional money, even if Detroit gets a minor, relief on their cap. But yeah, it's incredible. And look, I mean, people want to hate on Josh Smith, and I get it, and everyone gets it. He's like enormously frustrating. He takes a gazillion horrible shots. His athleticism has declined, or appears to have declined. But like, he's pretty good, and he's pretty good in the right role, which is A, never play him at small forward, and B, don't ask him to do too much, and C, just take him out of the game if he ever shoots from outside of 10 feet. But he's okay, and like the West is so competitive that like if you just gave Big Baby's minutes to him, or you gave John Lure's minutes to him, or I'm just like throwing out random names like that could make a difference.
I agree, and I think Dallas and Houston are interesting because if he goes to Dallas and they just plug him into that Brandon Wright, don't do anything other than roll to the hoop and be athletic role. He could be good at that if he wanted to, if he it would be a little bit of an ego blow. And then Houston, they love having bigs like Josh Smith. They tried to sign Josh Smith 2 years ago. They have a little bit of an inside track because he's close with Dwight Howard. The other team that I was waiting for them to get involved yesterday because I had heard they were going to get involved, and then finally it came out they're getting involved, was Miami, because they lost Josh McRoberts for the season. It's not it would be a very Miami, Pat Riley, Spoelstra type of thing to redeem Josh Smith's career. And why do I feel like that's like the best fit for him? What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, they just need bodies right now, especially with Bosh hurt too. He doesn't really fit the way they play. The pace and space, move the ball, everyone can shoot threes or at least shoot moderately long jumpers and blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's a good passer and he's a good screener, but he doesn't quite fit their ethos. And my sense from Miami is there's a little bit of division in among the power players there about whether they should go after him. But clearly getting the injury or the disabled player exception for McRoberts indicates they might try. But yeah, he'd be interesting there. But again, I mean, they need bodies to, just to stay alive. And I mean, I won't even call it the Eastern Conference playoff race. Whatever it is, they just need some healthy guys to play.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking from the perspective of if he's going to get to a playoff team where he's playing potentially 35 minutes a game, that's the team. I don't know if Josh Smith is playing 30 plus minutes is a great fit for anybody with what's happened to his game the last couple of years. But I also thought he was underrated heading into that Detroit experience because Atlanta made the playoffs a bunch of years, and he was the best guy on that team, and they made the round 2 a couple times. And I always thought he was a little bit underrated just because people got kind of distracted by the bad shot selection and the facial expressions. It's hard for me to imagine that he's done, and I think you just pointed out he was being used incorrectly in Detroit. They're playing him at small forward, or he didn't have good point guards. He had one of the worst coaching experiences you could have as an NBA player last year. It was a complete catastrophe. And then this year, the coach didn't want him. So I hesitate to say the guy's done,
Oh, no, he's definitely not done. But the Tom Haberstroh tweeted this today, and it's, he has like 8 dunks this year, which is way down for him. His shooting at the rim has been really bad, but that's been like a plague in Detroit. None of their big guys can hit a layup to save their life this season. So like his athleticism indicators are going the wrong way. Like that you mentioned Brandon Wright, like I think we kind of underrate how hard it is to do what Brandon Wright had done in Dallas, that like jump from the foul line, catch and dunk. Like I'm not sure Josh Smith can really do that. And now he can do some other things. He can catch it on the move and pass it to corner shooters and make smart reads that Brandon Wright probably can't make. But I'm not. Just the athleticism indicators are not good on him right now. And look, I mean, like I was talking about this with a front office guy last week. Those good athlete guys who don't learn like old guy skills, who don't learn how to shoot, especially they can age fast. Like Gerald Wallace went from good NBA player to unplayable in like the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it's true. And there's been other times where you think that's going to happen to somebody, and then they all of a sudden develop the second act. Like I thought Shawn Marion was going to be one of those guys. I thought he would be at, basically where Gerald Wallace is right now, but he managed to kind of figure out how to reinvent himself. I think Vince, who's more talented than all the guys we're talking about here, but Vince was another guy who reinvented himself. I don't know if Josh Smith cares enough to reinvent himself, but if he is that close with Dwight Howard, and Dwight Howard was the best man in his wedding, and he does have something to prove. He's also only 29 years old, which is amazing. I felt like he was like 38. I mean, I know he wasn't, but it just feels like he's been around forever. So, Houston would be fascinating. I think just for the on paper standpoint of it, I think it would be incredible if Dallas ended up with him, just because you think about the summer of 2013, they carve out all that cap space for Dwight Howard or Darren Williams. They don't get either of them. All they have is Dirk. Dirk's like the only asset on the team. Jason Kidd spurns them. He goes to the Knicks. And in less than 18 months, they added Monte Ellis, Tyson Chandler, Rajon Rondo, Chandler Parsons, and then they would add Josh Smith. Like if I just told you all of those names in July, you would have thought I was insane, right?
Yeah, and they haven't really given up a lot of stuff other than cap flexibility, obviously, to get all those guys. And the linchpin, clearly, at least for Parsons' purposes, is that Dirk took a third of what he's worth, which is insane. But yeah, no, they've already, with or without Smith, they've gotten talent at low cost, and they're going to have to work out the fit issues. But yeah, Smith, he'd be interesting there. I mean, look, without Wright, they're playing like Charlie Villanueva and Dirk together. Like that really can't sustain. They're trying Greg Smith. They're playing more small ball. They hate playing Dirk at center, and they've broken that out a couple of times. And Jermaine O'Neal just had this bizarre series of tweets right now. Not bizarre, but he teased like he was going to tweet his decision about what he was going to do. But so far, I'm looking at, he said like 6 tweets about how hard this decision is for him and how he is physically. He says he's physically better than 60% of the bigs in the league right now, blah, blah, blah. But he still hasn't said what the hell he's going to do. Everyone kind of thinks he's going to go to Dallas, but if he doesn't, they definitely need another big body.
Yeah, the Rondo trade has spawned this, people wondering how he's going to fit with Monte and was it worth it and all this stuff. Like, just in a vacuum, it was worth it because their point guards were terrible. And anybody who thinks Rondo isn't better than all the point guards they had by a significant margin is insane. But they decimated their bench. And that's like yesterday I watched them play Atlanta. Yesterday was a secretly good hoops day. There was a lot of good
Great
games last
game
night.
yesterday.
And, there's Charlie Villanueva. And you're thinking, oh, so this is maybe why this wasn't that great of a trade for them, because not only was Brandon Wright, a really good 20 minutes a game for them, but, I like Jay Crowder. I think he's a really good defensive player. And to lose both of those guys, just you can kind of feel it. And there is a little pressure on them now to add people. And it's easy to get role guys in February, especially after buyouts, but it's still an issue right now, I think, don't you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, they need another big body, and Wright for them off the bench was underrated and really, really good. And they're playing guys who are marginal rotation players now. They're playing guys out of position, and we know they don't want to play Dirk at center hardly ever to expose him to that kind of banging. It wasn't really an issue against the Hawks last night, but they need another guy. And Crowder, we'll see if he amounts to much in the NBA, but he's a prospect worth looking at. And it's going to be really fascinating. I mean, Rondo has hurt their spacing. You've seen it in the first two games, and it's going to take a while to kind of sort that out. Look, talent-wise, clearly it was a no-brainer just to get a guy of Rondo's talent. I'm not a big Rondo guy. I think he's a little bit overrated. I think it's going to be a complicated fit for them, but he's worlds better than their other point guards, and I get why they took the risk. It's going to be very interesting to see kind of how it all works out. I mean, the West is a freaking bloodbath.
Yeah, you wrote about the trade right after it happened, and you presented basically both sides, why it could be considered a good move and why it couldn't. It was a very Spock-like column. You saw both sides, and it was fresh, it was new. Maybe you didn't want to go on a limb one way or the other yet. It feels like now you're leaning a little bit against it. Is that fair?
No, I think ultimately, if you put a gun to my head, if I were Dallas, I would do it, because I think it's he's clearly, look, they were not going to win the West with the defense they were playing, and he gives them a little size, a little length, a little tenacity. I think he's overrated as a defender too, but compared to the guys he's replacing, he's decent. He'll help them on the boards. Like, if they want to win a championship this year, this is helpful for them, and I think maybe they can re-sign him at a non-max contract, and you've got like a guy going forward for the next few years that can play with Dirk. I just think people remember Rondo from like 3 years ago against Miami doing crazy stuff and think that's who Dallas is getting. And we haven't seen that player. And there's the assumption that he'll just flip a switch and it will come on. But like, he was in a contract year this year. Like, he should be contract year Rondo. And he was just frankly not that good on either end of the floor. And he's just a weird stylistic piece that kind of halfway doesn't fit the way they've been playing offense. It's just, he's a weird piece, and he can't shoot, and he mucks up your spacing, and you've got to mix him in there. And ultimately, I think you bet on Rick Carlisle to figure it out, but it's a risky deal.
Yeah. I was talking about this with one of my friends yesterday. Contract year Rondo, I do feel like a huge part of him in the contract year was he just didn't want to get hurt. And that was just why I watched more Celtics than usual this year, just because I kind of like the team. And I just always got the sense from him, just as somebody who, still played a lot of pickup basketball until recently, you can kind of tell when guys don't care if they get hurt versus when they care. And the way he was playing, to me, looked like a guy who just wanted to get through the season without an injury, which is a terrible way for him to play. Because I thought one of the things that made him great was he would be occasionally reckless. He would switch on, he would just go barreling into the lane and barrel off big guys. He just wasn't doing that. He never took charges. Defensively, he wasn't as bad as like Kobe, but he was definitely below average. He wasn't trying that hard on defense. And
yeah, defense is funny. Like, it takes people, like, there's like a 2-year lag time between when someone's defensive ability changes one way or the other, when people, media and fans realize it. And like, Rondo's in that, like, people still think he's an all defense kind of player, and he just hasn't been for 2 or 3 years at least.
But I think on Dallas that can come back pretty quickly, and you could even you can see it in the last 2 games, because some of the stuff he does is just unique to him, like the way he floats around and tries to sneak behind guys, and the way he helps, and the way he jumps. He gambles on steals too much. He can guard bigger guys, which I always thought has made him a little bit unique from different point guards.
That's huge. I think that's huge for Dallas. When you have so many little guys, You need some of those little guys to be able to guard twos. And his rebounding, too, I mean, that's what makes him really unique, and that's a weak spot for the Mavs. Especially on defense, but on offense, they would like more offensive rebounds. They're a team that kind of believes in the power of offensive rebounds. And if you can get, you watch Patrick Beverley offensive rebound for the Rockets. If you can get 3 or 4 sneaky point guard offensive rebounds a game, then you kick out for threes those are game changers.
Right. Well, then the other thing, you talk about the spacing, and I agree. It's going to take them a little bit of time to figure it out because they got Chandler too. And you don't want to get in the situation where OKC was the last couple years where you're playing 3-on-5 and it's just easy to kind of focus on the 3 guys in the last 6 minutes. But Rondo, and he had this skill too, especially during the peak of Pierce, KG, and Ray Allen. He has the ability when he doesn't have the ball. People always think he's just going to stand there and you can lay off him. That's not what he does. He's sneaky. He's cagey. He moves around like a cat, and all of a sudden he's along the baseline, or he's suddenly doing a cut for a layup, or he's kind of lingering, waiting for the rebound. He's always up to stuff when he's locked in. And I think that's the guy that Dallas is getting. In Boston, he would just give up the ball and just stand there. He wasn't. And I do think they had to trade him. It was too bad that was the way it worked out. But, not just for what we were seeing from the games, but from what I was hearing, in practice, when you have your guy who's the unquestioned best guy in the team and the quote unquote leader of the team, and he's just not going hard in practice at all, that puts a coach who's trying to get through to young players in a really bad spot. And I think they knew they had to trade him. What's crazy is Dallas really had the only good offer. They weren't really bidding against it. I think Danny maybe made them think there were other people, but from what you've heard, there was no other good offer, right?
From what I heard, the Lakers made it known that they would have offered Nash Houston's pick that they got for Jeremy Lin in a second rounder. And so Houston's pick is going to be wherever it is, 24, 25. So that's a little bit qualitatively worse than Dallas's offer, but not miles worse. And then just there aren't that many teams. I mean, he's an expiring contract. He wants a big max contract in the summer. He's going to be a free agent, and he plays at a loaded position. And I don't start ranking the point guards. I don't know if he's one of the top 10 or 12 point guards in the NBA anymore. They just weren't going to gin up good offers for that kind of player when some of the crazy teams, A, are bad. So it's not like they're scrambling for playoff seeding, and B, have cap room in the summer and could just sign him without giving up anything. And, I wrote this, but the ACL tear, it was horrible on every level for Boston, and it was horrible for trade reasons because it wiped out the season when they would have gotten something for him. And that was last season when the team that gets him can say, hey, we have him for this season and, training camp and a full season after that to really get him into our team and make him want to stay here and see what we have. And that's the Darren Williams trade happened on that timetable, and it just wiped that season out for them.
I think the Darren Williams trade is your best case scenario for a trade like that. And I think, Rasheed Wallace, Rondo, people like that, the in-season trade where there's just no market, but the team knows they have to get rid of them anyway. I think that's the worst. Both of us have heard that maybe Dallas wasn't as unanimous with this trade as we thought. I've heard varying things on Carlisle. I've heard that he was against it. I've heard that he was lukewarm on it, and I've heard that he was in on it, but I tend to believe the lukewarm to not as into it version. If you're Carlisle, that you knew what you had with the team you had, you weren't going to probably win the title, but you weren't going to take any heat for it. Now you bring Rondo in. Monte Ellis has a head case history, but has been great for Dallas. But in the past, especially in Milwaukee, definitely got a little head casey. Now you have 2 of those guys. And then you're talking about bringing Josh Smith in, too. If I'm Carlisle, I don't have any hair left to lose, but I'm losing whatever hair I would have lost, I feel like.
Yeah, I've heard divided things, and I've heard enough divided things that I don't really know what the truth is about, who wanted him and who was a little nervous about it and all of that. But I will say this, the more I cover the NBA and the more I talk to people, I've learned that you can't underestimate the importance of training camp and just the security of having a guy in camp to learn your system, to learn his teammates and all of that. And and on the flip side, the difficulty of incorporating a guy in the middle of the season. I mean, teams don't like to do that. It's more challenging than I think we think from the outside. And then you throw in the fact that he's a completely unique player. It isn't easy. I wouldn't be surprised if the coaching staff thought, "Whew, man, we're rolling here offensively. We're really playing well, and now we gotta reinvent the wheel a little bit."
Yeah, and that what you just mentioned is huge and something that people don't really think about that much. The other thing that people don't think about is just familiarity and how important it is with basketball. And you can feel it whether you play pickup or wherever. When you're playing with people you don't know, there's always a little bit of a hesitation or, oh, I thought you were going there, but you went here. And it just takes a while. We even saw it with Cleveland, and we're still seeing it with Cleveland. Like, you put that many new players on a team, and it's going to take a while just for them to reach a average level of familiarity. And then, hopefully after years and years and years, that familiarity becomes what we saw with the 2013 Heat or something like that. I thought Dallas's best advantage from what I saw the first 6 weeks was how it just seemed like they knew how to play together. And the some of the parts wasn't as good as the actual whole. And now they're in a situation where it's parts again. And I wonder, if you had to pick New Orleans or Phoenix to make a run here, would you pick either of those teams to make a run, or just you don't think either of them will?
I don't. I think the playoff race is over. I mean, I wrote this today, but I don't. I mean, the Pelicans are in 8th. Phoenix is in 9th. Oklahoma City is in 10th. But that's a false reading of the standings. Oklahoma City is in 8th. Just put them there, and they might get higher than that. And then you have to think, who are those other teams catching? Who in the top? So they're already 5 and 6 games behind the 7th and 6th seeds, and barring an injury, I just don't see any of those teams falling apart. Now, injuries happen, and if you're New Orleans and Phoenix, you have to, continue to play as if you might get a break like that. But, I think Phoenix is a better team, a more cohesive team, even though they've had some chemistry issues and some really bad home losses. But New Orleans, a game ahead of them, and they've played a really, really tough schedule, whereas Phoenix has played a pretty easy schedule with a lot of Eastern Conference teams. So I guess I'd pick New Orleans just because the schedule is going to lighten up for them in January. But I don't really think either of those teams has a realistic chance to make the playoffs. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it.
Well, you're making one mistake. You're looking at those teams like they're finished products, and I'm not sure New Orleans is, because the X factor with New Orleans is if they miss the playoffs but they don't get a top 3 pick, it goes to Houston, right? So, well,
that's the thing. They have no trade assets left.
Well, you're right. Yes, they don't have any trade assets left, but they have one move to make. You know what it is. There's a move where they take on more salary for a slight upgrade that you only do if you're kind of slightly panicking and you're going to lose your first round pick if you don't make the playoffs. There's a move out there.
I don't know what it is. I'm kind of in suspense right now.
You're in suspense? It's a team. It's a team that lives very close to where you live. It's a guy who makes a lot of money.
Well, there's 4 guys. I mean, you're describing at least 4 guys in the general New York City area.
Joe Johnson.
Well, a lot of people have mentioned the Joe Johnson, Eric Gordon possibility, and I've been told repeatedly that no, from both sides. But I mean, I guess. So the Nets save some money. The Pelicans get a player who's actually healthy and pretty good. I think they'd have to do some salary gymnastics because Joe makes so much more than Gordon does. But their contract expired. No, it's 50. He's 15, and what's Johnson, 21, 22?
You could do it for
It's not much. You're right.
It would be Johnson for Eric Gordon makes 15.
Johnson, throw in 23. Johnson, oh my God.
John Salmons and Austin Rivers or whatever, and you're done. They could get there. And there's a lot of stuff going around about Prokhorov right now because the ruble has gone way down in Russia, and he's just not there. I mean, he's probably the all-time absentee NBA owner we've had this century. I think he goes to 3 games a year. They have to swap picks with Atlanta this year. so they can't even tank. Boston gets their pick next year. They got to swap picks with Boston in 2017, and Boston gets their 2018 pick. So blowing it up makes no sense, but paying crazy amounts of money for a roster that has no chance of winning the title makes no sense either, which is why I think Darren ends up in Sacramento, and I think Joe Johnson gets traded, and New Orleans makes the most sense. And if you put Joe Johnson on New Orleans, in lieu of Eric Gordon, who isn't even playing, that's a really interesting team now, especially Joe Johnson. Say what you want about the dude, but that dude can make plays at crunch time. And that guy's a good two guard who, can still do things. I think they'd be interesting if they got him.
Well, he had one of the greatest crunch time seasons ever last year, where he was like 8 of 9 in the last minute of a game or something like that. In the last minute of close games. It was crazy. One buzzer beater after another. He can play both wing positions. Yeah, Joe Johnson is good. I mean, the contract has come to define him, but he's a very good NBA player. He would clearly help them. He can play with and without the ball. He can post up. He can do he's a good defender. He would clearly help them. And they need help on the wing. They need some balance in their roster, which is all screwed up, and their bench is a disaster, and everything that we all know. And again, the Nets would save some money, and that should be the Nets' primary goal, is just get out of these contracts as soon as possible. And that's why Darren Williams to Sacramento is fascinating to me. The Plumlee variable, the Plumlee holdup is so interesting, because Plumlee went from look at Chart Plumlee's last year. Like a year ago, he was like bench surprise. Oh wow, Plumlee's really good. Then the playoffs came around, and Plumlee basically fell out of the rotation. It was like, oh, he's not ready for prime time. Then it's like Team USA. Plumlee doesn't deserve it, but still, it's cool. He's on Team USA. Then he almost fell out of the rotation, and basically did again this season. Jerome Jordan was playing over him in a few games. And now over the last 2 weeks, it's like Plumlee's averaging 20 and 10. He's dunking everything in sight. And now he's like the holdup in your one chance to dump Darren Williams' terrible contract. And you wonder how much of a holdup he would be if it weren't for the last 10 days.
Well, all right, so let's say they dump Joe Johnson to New Orleans. They'd save $5 million this year, something like that. If they could figure out a way to dump Darren on the Kings, save another $4 million, and then you buy KG out in February and you save 2/3 of his salary, which I think he would do, because he'd just immediately go to the Clippers or wherever. And
I think he's tradable too, but it's just a matter of, he can dictate because of a no trade. But
so they're at, I don't know how accurate this is on HoopSite. They're at 91 million right now. They could get under 80 with 3 moves. And then at that point, I forget what is the luxury tax number? Is it's high 70s?
77.
Yeah, at that
76.9.
Although actually the part of that number is $4 million for Travis Outlaw, which is an amnesty. So those 3 moves would get them under the tax, which is what they have to do. And I think that's their plan. And Joe Johnson, again, has been defined by his contract, but I think he's a better player than that. And I also don't mind getting Joe Johnson, because now it's just this year and next year. And next year, that's a giant expiring contract that either he's still good or that becomes a real trade asset. I don't mind paying Joe Johnson $24 million in 2016 if I can trade it. So
can you trade it though? I mean, expiring contracts just aren't worth much anymore, especially ones that are that big. But it's not a bad thing to have. I mean, for me, the Nets, the savings is nice. Saving Prokhorov some money is nice, and all of that. To me, their only path to being interesting as a franchise until they start getting their picks back is in free agency. And the only way they can really get there and be power players is to start getting off of this money. So, even if even if you have to take back crap for D. Will, the crap doesn't run as long as his contract runs, which has 2 seasons left after this one at a disastrously high number. So you can start being active, at least trying to get new guys in there. But I mean, it almost doesn't matter. They have no avenue to being good in the next 5 years because they don't have their picks. And even if they do dump all this money, it's like Kevin Durant isn't coming here to be the guy on a bad team. That's just that's not happening.
Right. Have you ever seen a team get ruined with more moves than I can't remember a team not having a future for this long while also not having a present, like without having like some sort of gigantic injury or something. Just it's kind of unprecedented, and I can't believe Billy King still has a job. I don't know what else you have to do to lose your job. And he lost this power struggle with Jason, or he won this power struggle with Jason Kidd, who I will fully admit I made a lot of jokes about last year as a first-year coach. Jason Kidd's done a really nice job with the Bucks. I got to say, really, really nice.
Jason Kidd's a legitimately good coach, and I think we learned that in the second half of last year. We're learning it now. He's a good coach. And, if the Nets miss the playoffs this year, which again in the Eastern Conference that's actually hard to do, especially if Boston has if Boston has a Jeff Green trade in them, they could fall back, and then it's like Orlando, Indiana, Charlotte. These teams are 10 games under 500 right now. They're the next teams in line. Orlando has a bunch of home games coming to them. They've already played 20 road games. It's like, are you really, do you really have faith in them to make a run? But if they miss the playoffs, I do think, and even if they just get the 8th seed and get destroyed in the first round, I don't think Billy King survives it. I just don't. And we'll see. He's survived everything else. But it's just bad. They're bad, and they have no avenue to get good.
And I think the Garnett Pierce trade and everything they gave up just for a year, Pierce and Garnett, who just immediately fossilized as soon as he joined them, is on the short list of worst trades ever, potentially. I don't know if the majority of NBA fans know that Atlanta is going to swap picks with them this year. Atlanta's 20-7 right now. Atlanta could conceivably, that could be like the 24th pick or the 23rd pick, something like that. And Brooklyn could be the 9th pick. And Atlanta kind of under the radar, starting with the miraculous Joe Johnson trade, which is another one of the worst trades, but just to dump that salary.
How did they get pick swaps as part of this trade? I mean, that's the ultimate due diligence reminder. Like, just ask for stuff to see if you can get it. And don't give up stuff just because you want to get something done. Like, that's all that is. That's Atlanta being like, okay, can we get this? Like, might as well just ask for it. And that's the Nets being like, oh yeah, we just want Joe Johnson so badly. Like, just whatever, pick swap. Like, that's not going to be an issue. And like, now it's an issue.
So Billy King gave up the 2nd overall pick and the 3rd overall pick for Darren Williams. He gave up the 6th overall pick, which turned out to be Damian Lillard, for Gerald Wallace.
Now that's an all-time bad trade.
That's an all-time bad trade.
That is like that. We're going to be telling that's 50 years from now. We're going to be talking about that trade. That, and the day of the trade or the day after the trade, he came out and said, we only think there are 3 good players in this draft anyway. Right. So unless it's because it was a top 3 protected pick. So if it falls outside the top 3, who cares? Well, okay. I mean,
but he said that in February. We hadn't even seen the March Madness yet. Because the draft changes every year from February to June. That was incredible. And then gives away.
Look, Portland literally could not believe that trade was available to them. Anyway, please continue.
Well, and then they lose there were 2 Joe Johnson pick swaps, right?
Yeah.
It was 2013 and 2012 and 2014 or something. I think there was a double
15,
pick swap.
But I can't remember.
13 and 15. And then the Celtics got 16 and 18 unprotected, which is incredible. Unprotected. And then the pick swap in 17. So
Danny Ainge is sitting there just like rubbing his hands together, hoping that nobody throws them a life raft in whatever form that would take.
Yeah, my dad is kind of upset that they've stockpiled so many picks, but he's just like, so what does this mean? We're going to be good again when I'm 73 years old? Like, he's kind of in that mode, but I do think Danny doesn't think about it that way. I think he just looks at it like assets, and it's just like, can I take this asset and turn it into a better asset? And I'm going to stockpile all of these assets together, and eventually life's going to work out for me because I'm Danny Ainge and it did before. Well, I think that's his mindset.
Let's also not understate the importance of ownership in all of this. Like you've got Danny, the Celtics owners are smart, and they understand that strategy, and they give Danny the green light to basically do what Danny thinks is best in pursuit of a championship. I mean, that's what the Celtics want. They want stars or draft picks that can get them stars to try and build a championship team. And the Nets had an ownership that said, we're moving to Brooklyn. We're spending $1 gazillion on the arena and the team. We want to be good right away at all costs, and we'll fire you in 5 seconds if we don't think you're executing that. And like, that's how you end up with trades like this. That's how you end up with New Orleans trading all of its draft picks to try and get to 500 as soon as possible. Like that stuff really, really matters.
Yeah. And that, they've kind of slid under the radar with that, but it mildly tragic. The team they put around Davis, when you think about it, just not, it was a little bit like what Cleveland did with LeBron, those first few LeBron years, where there was this race to be good. It's over what Oklahoma City did with Durant, which was just, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Let's let this breathe for a few years. Let's just take lottery picks and not do anything crazy.
And also let's recognize that you don't win the championship when your best player is 21 years old, ever. Right.
And the Ashik trade, I like the Ashik trade, except they're going to lose that pick now, which means they will have lost 3 first-round picks for Ashik and Drew Holiday. And then it also puts pressure on them to sign Ashik. You also need luck with this stuff,
Oh, my God.
I was thinking, like, if you're the Bulls right now, after having watched Mirotic, who you and I both really like, would you rather have Carmelo on this Bulls team and no chance to have any sort of anything other than Carmelo, Joakim Noah, Rose, versus the team they have now? I guess Jimmy Butler would have stayed. Versus the team they have now and the flexibility they have with Gibson and Mirotic and not having Carmelo take every shot at crunch time. I mean, that is one of the all-time fork in the roads, and they would have happily signed Carmelo, happily. So you need luck. You just do.
And I'll say this for New Orleans. They're getting slammed left and right, and I don't think all of it is fair. Number one, because of the ownership thing. Like, if you want to get good fast, the best thing to do is trade picks for established players. Like that, they're better because they don't have Nerlens Noel and Elfrid Payton and a first-round pick. Like, they're qualitatively better. And actually, I like Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday is a good NBA player, and they've mostly signed young guys whose ages aren't that far away from Davis, to the point that if it worked, if they all congealed together, they could grow into a team. The two caveats are Eric Gordon has turned out to be a disaster, and Robin Lopez and Vasquez for Tyreek Evans. Oh. Tyreek's okay. Tyreek's pretty good. He meshes well. If you run a pick and roll with Tyreek and Davis and you have Ryan Anderson spacing the floor, that's really powerful offensively. But he's probably not quite worth what his contract is. And because you traded Robin Lopez, who's a very nice center, you then gave up another pick to get Ashik to replace a guy that you could have effectively already had on your team. And I think that's where you start to see sort of the trickling disappearance of assets in ways that are just like not optimal. You could have spent that Tyreek money just on like a couple of wing shooters or something and had basically the same team win-wise with a little bit more flexibility going forward. But so all that being said,
but we both know why they did that, though.
Did what? Which one? All Tyreek. Of that together?
No, Tyreek. Come on.
Oh, well, that's right. He's Arn Tellem, right? Doesn't Arn Tellem represent half the team now?
Well, including Anthony Davis, who's the guy they cared about on that team.
Well,
so I think that was part of it. I hate giving up assets so I can then overpay Tyreek Evans. I hate that trade every time. I despised it when it happened. I always liked Vasquez and I always liked Lopez. That you can win. You could have a playoff team and have those guys as your 5th, 6th, or 7th guy. It's not a disaster.
And the timing is everything, right? Look at the team that has Lopez now. Portland is a team that absolutely should consider flipping a first-round pick for if they got a first-round pick, if they could get first-round pick and I'm just making this up, Myers Leonard and a minimum salary if you need it for Wilson Chandler to just beef up your bench and be a wing player that can come in and play 20 minutes. Maybe it gives you a little more versatility to play small ball when Aldridge sits if the matchup dictates it. That's an asset play that makes sense because Portland has a chance to win the championship. All their guys, except for Lillard, are prime age, and Lillard is basically in his prime anyway. Like, that's a timetable asset play that makes sense in a way that New Orleans didn't quite make sense. I think Portland will sniff around deals exactly like that, by the way. Portland's good. Portland has won me over.
I like Portland as well, and they're the number one Jeff Green candidate for me. That's kind of the perfect Jeff Green spot, right? Jeff, you need to play 25 minutes. You'll never have to shoot a shot in the last 90 seconds of a game if it's tied or down one. And he'll be like, that sounds awesome. I hate shooting in the last 90 seconds. Can I just shoot when we're up 10? He'll be great. He'll be perfect.
It's
I like Jeff Green.
It's tough for them to carve out. Well, no, they could do it. They could cobble together enough salary. It's just I wonder if they look at Jeff Green. See, like the Jeff Green's played almost all the three at small forward this year for Boston. Some teams look at him as more of a 4 or a hybrid, and they just don't want small ball 4s because LaMarcus doesn't mess well with those guys. He wants a 5 next to them. But yeah, I mean, I think Portland will sniff around for sure.
So LaMarcus doesn't like the small ball 4s.
Well, no, I mean, like that's been an issue. He's always said, "I want a banger next to me." When they used to play Gerald Wallace at the 4 and LaMarcus at the 5, they would kill teams, and he would say, "I don't like taking the banging down there. I'd rather have a big time center or a big body next to me." And that's why they went after Hibbert. That's why they got Lopez. Like that's their MO. Yeah. And so I don't see them really downsizing. But if they could add a wing player that could sort of take the like C.J. McCollum, Will Barton, Steve Blake at the 2 kind of minutes and upgrade them, that's powerful.
Well, they have the Robinson and Wright expiring contracts, which gets them almost to $7 million. Then they have Joel Freeland, $3 million expiring. Myers Leonard's 2 years left, but cheap money. And McCollum.
You see, he took 7 threes last night.
Who did?
Myers Leonard.
Really?
Yeah, he can shoot. He's a good shooter. But 7 threes is a little bit much.
Yeah, you mentioned how they could upgrade the Steve Blake spot. Steve Blake's been prominently involved in this Blakers season. I wasn't prepared for that. I thought he would have been more likely to see him on with Cassidy Hubbarth on the ESPN NBA show at 12:30.
Oh, he's okay. This is like his 19th time playing for the Blazers. They love him there. He probably has like 4 second homes there.
Yeah, some guys are just one team is the right team for them, and that's it. They can't play for the other 29. But for whatever reason, one team is the right fit. Maybe that's one. The other guy that's back to the Celtics trade for 1 second. They could get something really good for Brandon Wright if they decided they didn't want to keep him. He's 1 year, $5 million. They traded him for him, and this is why I really felt strongly that they were going to move Rondo before the end of last week, because they can now spin Brandon Wright and Crowder before the deadline. I also think Crowder, for a team like the Clippers, would have real value. I feel like Crowder would play crunch time for the Clippers. He's better than Matt Barnes. Am I crazy to think he's better than Matt Barnes?
I think you might be a little bit crazy to think that.
Okay. He's on my team now. I become Tommy Heinsohn when Celtics are involved.
I can see how he could be. He's just unproven, and like the under. Well, first of all, Barnes is shooting like 39% from 3. Whatever was going on with him in terms of shooting slump,
right?
I think that's his season-long mark is something like 38-39%. But that doesn't mean anyone guards him. You know what I mean? Like the spacing effect is still there. It'll gradually change.
36%.
He's been in a slump lately then. But he's like he's feisty. He rebounds. He really cuts in smart ways off the ball. Just has a high basketball IQ that fits well with that group. Maybe Crowder could do that. I'm not convinced.
I'd rather have Jay Crowder. I've already seen what life is like with Matt Barnes. And I just think the Clippers, it's weird to me that sometimes you watch them, they should be like one of the most athletic teams in the league, right? And sometimes I watch them and I think, this team's not athletic enough, which is a weird thing to say about a team that has Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan on it. But especially you feel it at the 2-3 spots when Redick's chasing around whoever, like a guy like Westbrook goes against them and it just seems frightening, like, all right, who is the perimeter guy who can match this guy athletically? I feel like they need to make a trade, but they have really no assets to make the trade. And Doc, the GM, has been awful.
I think Doc, the GM, should go after Josh Smith.
Really?
I would. You can fit the prorated minimum. I'm 95% sure you can fit the prorated minimum under the hard cap because they're hard capped. And I hate their bench. Other than Jamal Crawford, I hate their bench. And it's weird because Hato's shooting 50% from three, Big Baby's shooting 50% overall. I just don't think they're good. And I think if you gave Big Baby's minutes to somebody better, that could be helpful. I agree they need another piece. I mean, it's crazy. They might be the 7th best team in the Western Conference right now. It's just insane. It's like the Western Conference is just, this could be the greatest conference ever in a single season. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm really lukewarm on the Clips. I think Christmas night will be a great test for them. I don't like what I've seen from Blake this year. I feel like there's just something missing this year, whether he's not 100% healthy or whether he's waiting to dial it up or he's doing too much off the court or he's got some injury we don't know about. I don't totally understand.
I think he's looked pretty explosive lately. You don't agree? Like in the last 2-3 weeks, I think he's made some posts. Like he's looked like old Blake to me the last couple of weeks.
I haven't been to a game in 2 weeks. The last one I went to was the Phoenix game, which he was starting to look like Blake. I will admit, but I don't know. I voted for him for 3rd MVP last year. You know, when you think of it in that context, it hasn't been the same season. I don't even think he would make one of the top 2 All-NBA teams this year. The way he's played now,
numbers aren't
super early.
All that different.
I'm looking it up.
I mean, it feels like that, but he's shooting 49%, which is a little bit down. But that's almost all because
rebounds are way down.
Rebounds and free throws are both down, and those are like athletic kind of indicators. But he's still taking 7 free throws. His rebounds are down. They've been up a little bit recently.
Well, his field goal percentage is down from 53 to 49.
Yeah, that's all jumpers.
Rebounds are down 9.5 to 7.7. That's not good.
I guess it's not all jumpers. He's shooting 69% at the rim, which is down from the mid-70s where he's been lately. I don't know. Just the numbers are what they are, and I guess they're a little bit down. The eye test for me the last 3 weeks has been mostly encouraging. But, the margin for error in the West is non-existent. Like, they need peak Blake, period. They need last season's Blake if they want to have a chance to win the championship.
Hold on, I'm going to bring in Charles Barkley for 1 second. Hey, Blake Griffin, if you can't average 2 rebounds per quarter, that's an embarrassment. That's terrible. That's terrible. Seriously, he should be averaging 2 rebounds a quarter.
Breaking news, retired NBA player thinks current NBA player isn't good enough. Shocking development. Every retired player thinks everyone stinks and the game is going to hell. Every single one of them.
I know. Jerry West is probably number 1 on that list. That'd be a good power rankings. I think Jerry West hates basketball. He just hates what's happened to it. He can't take it. If you put like 1 drink in him, he'll go on some sort of soliloquy. So you did your Western power rankings and you had OKC number 1.
Clearly, I'm an insane person.
What did the Warriors do to offend you?
Nothing. I'm riding with healthy OKC.
Okay.
And I know it's crazy because they're going to have to come from like 6, 7, or 8. I'm not betting against them. If they're healthy, they were going to be my pick to win the title this year, and then everything went to hell for them. And I kind of wrote a column that said I would have picked them. This should be their year. And now now that I'm confident KD is going to be back. He's not playing tonight, but that's just his little ankle thing. I think they're the best team. Obviously, Scott Brooks is the primary source of anxiety when it comes to making that pick, but they've come very close before, and if they had been healthy the last 2 years, they might have made the finals and won a championship already, aside from the finals appearance they already had. I just think I'm Westbrook, Durant, and Ibaka healthy in their prime is just scary to me. Now, that said, would it shock me if they lost in the first round? Of course not. The Western Conference is insane. They could absolutely lose in the first round. And no matter what seed they get, if they somehow rocketed up to like number 3, they could still lose in the first round.
Westbrook has been particularly terrifying this year. Jalen and I were arguing about it because Jalen's like, he's the same guy he's been every year. You're just appreciating him more, all that stuff. That's fine. I feel like there's a slightly more cerebral aspect to his game, 1. And 2, he's the league's alpha dog now. I don't know if he's the best player in the league, but I think he has the most confidence of any player in the league. I really feel like he goes into these games.
I think Deion Waiters may still lead that category.
Okay, all right. Deion Waiters aside, I think Westbrook goes into these games now and thinks like, I'm destroying everybody and nobody can handle me. And athletically, I'm superior to all of you. And that's his attitude. And LeBron used to be like that for years and years. And whether he's picking his spots now or whatever's going on with him, I just don't feel like LeBron is like that game to game. But if you watch Russ, I don't care what game it is. It could be, Charlotte on a Tuesday night. It could be TNT, Golden State. It could be some Saturday night game in Minnesota. He's playing the same way every time. He's just balls to the wall, and he's just in the zone. It's real. I feel like he's become the alpha dog of that team. Like I feel like Durant is like his Robin now. Like they flipped. Am I crazy?
I mean, Westbrook has been sensational. I've always been a big Westbrook guy. I get that he has flaws, but I've always been very, very big Westbrook pro supporter. The downside of all that is like what's happened in crunch time of a couple of games recently when Durant has been injured, and it's what Westbrook taking one 30-footer after another and missing and missing and missing with no movement and no real play that's drawn up. And like he and Reggie Jackson can both get into that mode, and there's a lot of like dirty looks being shot back and forth between Durant, Westbrook, and Reggie Jackson. I just think they need everyone to make it work. But yeah, Durant, I mean, look, he went off for 30 and a half last week.
That was amazing.
He's the alpha dog when he comes back. But like, to me, that doesn't matter. They're co-alpha dogs, and they're both awesome. And I'm again, anyone could win the West, but if you put a gun to my head and said every single team is healthy, the playoffs are starting today, who are you picking? I'm going to pick Oklahoma City. Don't feel great about it, but that's who I'm picking. Who are you picking? Gun to your head. Everyone's healthy. Who are you taking?
I like
Depends on matchups. It's going to be all about matchups.
I know we say that every year with the West. I like Golden State the most because they're going to get the 1 seed. They have really got nothing at all from David Lee the whole season, which has been amazing. I think they have a subtle trade to make, probably not a big one, but they can upgrade the Barbosa spot and get somebody who can play 15 minutes a game there, who can make a couple threes and maybe be a heat check guy, which would be interesting. Getting Lee back will really help. Getting Bogut back will help. I just love the way they play together. Curry's on the short list of guys you feel good about with 3 minutes left in a tie game if he's on your team. Clay took a step up. I just like the way they're playing. I think they're going to be a really tough out at home. And as you point out with OKC, there's a slight chemistry thing going on there because you also have Reggie Jackson playing for the new contract. I'm going to say something nice about OKC. I like Roberson. I think they might have found something with him. You obviously can't play him and Perkins, or you can't put him with another guy who's a zero shooter because then you're going 3-on-5. But I think Roberson is a better option at that kind of guy who stands in the corner spot, even if he's not a great 3-point shooter. At least he's a great defensive player.
Well, you just described their starting lineup. They play Roberson with a guy who can't shoot. It's just Steven Adams now instead of Perkins. And Steven Adams is better by like a mile than Perkins. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I like this Oklahoma City team. I feel like some of the wrinkles have been just ironed out enough that they can do it. Now, that said, there will definitely be playoff games in which they have to take Roberson out immediately because he airballs 2 straight. Yeah, he'll airball 2 straight corner threes. Nobody will guard him, and Morrow or Jackson will have to come in, and that's fine. Those guys are good. Like, I feel like they have good enough depth, and that Scott Brooks can feel comfortable doing that.
Is there any chance OKC is going to make a trade? It's really hard for me to fathom that they wouldn't make a trade when they have the Perkins expiring. They have a number 1 pick. They have Jeremy Lamb, McGarry, maybe even Steven Adams. Like, it's not like they don't have pieces to move. And there are dudes out there that could help them. And it could be anybody. I mean, freaking Brandon Bass would help this team. There's guys out there that could help them, and missing pieces and veterans and people you could trust. Are we just to assume that they're never making another trade again after James Harden? That was the last trade he'll ever make?
They'll try. I just think they're justifiably cautious in terms of, dealing away of an asset that's going to be good for the next 6 or 7 years for short-term help that, may not move the needle. And some of the names you've mentioned, Bass, DeFallo, guys like that, I mean, they're nice. They're luxuries. They might make a difference in 1 or 2 playoff games, and that could be enough. But, when you're already as good as they are, I think you have to weigh that risk. And Adams, to me, is untouchable unless it's a blockbuster, so cross him off.
Well,
Lamb,
untouchable.
unless it's a blockbuster, unless you're getting a big player. I mean, because Steven Adams is a good young center. Like, there just aren't very many of those. And Lamb, I mean, does anyone in the NBA go up and down more than Lamb? He has 10 days where he goes 6 for 7 every day, and now he's playing 5 minutes a game, 0 for 2. Nobody trusts him. It's he's had a really crazy NBA career.
Yeah, there are nights you can catch Lamb, and it seems like they changed his coffee or something, and he suddenly looks super confident. But I'm looking at it really does seem like the Harden trade was the last trade OKC's made. I mean, they made a couple. They traded Thabo to the Hawks to make it easier for them to sign or whatever, little minor roster moves just to get some sort of exception or whatever. But the last real trade they've made was October 27th, 2012.
And that's a I remember exactly where I was NBA moment.
You just started working for us, right?
Oh yeah. No, I got an excited text from Bill Simmons that said, I think it just said Dork Elvis with 15 exclamation points after it.
I wrote about, please don't trade James Harden 3 weeks before that trade. Please don't do it. Do you think we have broken the record this year for most fan bases who feel like nobody appreciates their team enough? I feel like we're there.
Well, I mean, you've got the usual suspects, right? So Utah thinks everyone hates them or ignores them because they're in Utah. Toronto thinks there's a vast American conspiracy against the Toronto Raptors and everything in Canada. So those
Which
are
is hilarious. Both you and I are super pro Toronto, and yet I get emails all the time from people asking why I hate Toronto.
Well, and I think part of this is because the Western Conference is so good, right? So when you power rank the Western Conference, someone has to be number 8 and someone has to be number 7. And those fans rightfully think, hold on, my team is really, really good. How are you putting them number 7? And then you look at the teams above them and you're like, I don't know, who the hell is going to be there? Memphis? I mean, it's unbelievable.
Don't forget Memphis. Memphis fans think
they're fine. I like Memphis fans.
Oh, I like Memphis fans too, but they're always convinced people aren't talking about them enough, especially after they had the back-to-back wins last week against San Antonio.
There is a certain I mean, I get it. If you're one of those, if you're a New Orleans fan or a Memphis fan, but take Memphis specifically. I mean, how many times are they on national TV this year? I don't know, but it's in single digits. It might be less than 6.
Less than they should be.
And then you're Thursday night rolls around, and let's get excited for this Knicks, Bulls, Lakers, Clippers doubleheader again, because those teams have to be on TV every single week. I mean, I get it. Why are the Lakers on TV all the time? Why are we still writing about the Lakers? They stink. Case closed. Let's ignore them for 6 months.
Yeah. I was very excited. We did the last Grantland basketball show, and I don't even think we mentioned them, which was nice. Portland fans, huge axe to grind against everyone at all times.
Yeah, but they're nice.
We've talked about this. I fully support their axe to grind, and they're right. They have 2 of the best 18 players in the league, and they never get talked about ever. And they have a nice team, and the Lillard 40, what did he have, 43 or 46? What did he end up with on Friday night? 43.
Oh, that was I think 46. That was unbelievable. I was by myself in my apartment. This is the state of my life. My wife was already away for the holidays, and I was just laughing to nobody on my couch, cackling. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy. Then you have it so there are other nobody talks about us teams, but just their fans have either given up or there's just deep self-loathing. Atlanta, you never hear from Atlanta fans being nobody talks about the Hawks.
Right, and they're 19-7 or whatever. Yeah, and then San Antonio, they're always going to feel like they just have years of scars from the years when everybody just kicked them around. And even though the last 2 years were San Antonio Love Fest, they're still always going to have the chip on their shoulder, I feel like. But yeah. I would say probably Toronto might be the number 1 fan base now that feels like they're not getting enough love. So give them love for 20 seconds right now.
The Raptors or the fans?
The Raptor fans. Just give those fans love about their team right now, about the fact that we know that they have a good team.
I'm going there in 2 days, and I'm devastated that the Raptors aren't home. I love the Raptors. I love watching them play. I've been driving the Kyle Lowry bandwagon for 3 years at least. The Raptors are really good, and I'll say this, that it might be, I mean, there's no way to definitively prove this. I mean, 538 could come up with some measure, but that is an unbelievable sports town. Like, that's what I'll say for their fans. You go to, like, some dinky FC Toronto game, which is their MLS team, and, like, you think you're in Brazil all of a sudden with the way the fans are. I remember being out at a bar there last holidays, and there was a band playing, and the band was like, I'm sorry to do this. The Maple Leafs game just went into overtime. We're taking a break from the set to watch overtime. Sorry, patrons. And, like, everyone was like, yeah, watch the Maple Leafs. It's, like, unbelievable. Right. You can't get tickets to Maple Leafs games. It's like getting season tickets to an NFL team. You have to wait, like, 30 years.
It would be I tweeted this on Friday. I haven't enjoyed watching the Cavs this year. I've been stunned by how unenjoyable they've been. I really thought, like, I would be like, oh, the Cavs are on. You know, heading into the season, oh, the Cavs are on. Like, that would be like the dominant league pass feeling I'd have if they were playing. And the reality is, I really like watching Toronto and Washington, and I don't really like watching the Cavs. Maybe that'll change, but I just don't enjoy them that much. I love watching the Wizards, and I don't know if it's how much of it is just a Paul Pierce, you know, having grown up or having that guy grow up with the Celtics and became what he was, and now he's kind of settled into this savvy, crafty, veteran leader guy who occasionally makes the big three. Like, I love that he's at that phase. But those are my two favorite teams in the East to watch. If you told me right now, Toronto versus Washington in the Eastern Finals, I would sign up for that. I think that would be a really great finals.
No question. No question. Yeah, I mean, Cleveland, I said this to Pelton last week on my podcast, like, there are two things about them. Number one, they're not running a David Blatt offense. He's given up and surrendered control of that team to LeBron. They're running a LeBron pick and roll offense. Number two, like, there's just no, like, they don't play with force. There's no force on that team. Like, even when the Heat were kind of scuffling around in year one together, you just looked at, like, the athleticism and the power of Wade, Bosh, and James, and you thought, they're still scary. They're still going to figure it out. And, like, they're still, like, intimidating. Cleveland, like, no one is going into Cleveland and being like, oh, God, we're intimidated by Cleveland. There's no, like, oomph. There's no force. That said, they may well end up the best team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, their big three is better than anyone else's, but it's just, I thought they would intimidate people in a different way with their passing and their shooting, and they just haven't yet.
They're not good enough defensively, and LeBron just can't. Old LeBron could have played the 42 minutes where he's kind of on cruise control and then flipped it on, and it just doesn't seem like he can do that anymore. He'll have a night where you know he's going to have a good night, but he also has off nights too. If you like, Chicago's 18-9 and Cleveland's 16-10 right now. Chicago's 4 seed, Cleveland's a 5 seed. If I had to bet money on it right now, I think Chicago has a better chance to get the 1 seed than Cleveland does, because, you know, kind of quietly, Rose has started to look like Rose again. And if that's gonna keep happening, and if he can stay on the court and kind of become the guy we were hoping he'd become with all the other weapons they have, and with what's happened to Jimmy Butler, which is the story of the season from the WTF standpoint, Chicago's the scariest team in that conference. Sorry, Toronto, and sorry, Washington, but it's true.
Well, look, Derrick Rose played last night after sitting out 2 games in a row, and before that he played a bunch of games in a row after sitting out a bunch of games. It's like, you know, I keep watching Chicago and thinking, this is like, I might pick them to win the championship if they're healthy in April, because I love their roster. I love the way they're built, and they're in the East, so they don't have quite the gauntlet that some of the teams that are probably better in the West have to get through, and then they just have to win 1 series against the West team. They clearly should be in that conversation. We just need to see it. And Rose and Noah haven't been able to stay on the court, and until they are, you know, we just have to withhold judgment. But I agree. I think they are. Like I said, if they're healthy in April, I might pick them to win the championship.
Dude, they put up 49 on Toronto in the fourth quarter last night.
Little home cooking from the refs in that game. But yeah, no, they're a good offensive team.
No question. 49 though.
Yeah,
I mean, you could have Tim Donaghy in 2007 as your referee, and 49 is still a crazy total. Butler to me is not a top 3 MVP candidate, but I think he's like in the top 7 for what he's meant to that team, because that season could have gone really wrong for them coming out of the gate with what was going on with Rose's injury stuff. And to have somebody just come in and be like, you know what, guys, I've never been this kind of player before, but now I am. I got it. I'm cool. I'll be the rock of this team. Just crazy. I mean, they have a chance to get the 1 seed because of how he held the team together those first 7 weeks, I feel like.
Chicago had a chance to sign him for less than the max, and they didn't take it, and they're going to regret it because he's going to get the max unless he gets hurt.
Well, wasn't it way less than the max?
I
heard it was like 50 for 4 or something.
Well, it's unclear like what he would have accepted and what they offered. I've had varying conversations about that I probably shouldn't get into, but they definitely could have got him for less than the max. They could have, let's just say they could have got him for probably like 13, 12 and a half, something like that, 14 at the absolute peak.
I heard 50 for 4 because Klay Thompson got 70 for 4, and he's not Klay. He wasn't Klay Thompson at that point, but Alec Burks was getting around there.
You could see this coming. He's healthy.
Yeah.
And frankly, like I predicted, that I was optimistic about him, frankly, partly because Rose was back and he wouldn't have to do as much heavy lifting. And it turns out he's fine either way. I mean, he's obviously in the long run going to be better off if Rose can create some stuff for him. But no, he's been out. It's really fun to watch him. He is explosive and smart and tough as all hell. He is fun to watch.
True or false? The Celtics picked Marshawn Brooks like right before him, and then traded that pick for Juwan Johnson.
Where is Juwan Johnson now?
It's a great question. I'll tell you this.
Somewhere there's like a 3,000 word post on CelticsBlog.com about Juwan Johnson's potential to be a stretch 4 in the NBA.
I just want somebody to find me the one 6'11", 200-pound guy who just needed to put on some weight, who ended up making it at the end of the first round of an NBA draft.
Was that the same draft as Fab Melo, or is that a different draft?
No, see, now you're trying to hurt my feelings.
Sorry.
No, Fab Melo was the year after. I think you're right. The Celtics, they did the J.R. Giddens over DeAndre Jordan.
Sullinger Melo were back-to-back. That's right.
The Melo one was like just instantly a cross-off. There was never a point in my life where I felt like that pick was making it. It was like, oh, I'm crossing that off now. Wait, he's just getting his hat. No, I'm crossing it off. I'm done. But
that was your classic. We have back-to-back picks, and we're willing to just like take the 3% gamble because we feel like we have an extra chance. So let's just do it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna bring that pick up to Mike Zarin until about 2020. I feel like we'll probably wait till next decade to make fun of him. Probably still a little raw. All right, Zach. I think we hit everything, right?
I guess, yeah. We talked about a lot of teams. I don't know who else we should have.
No, that's it. I think we hit everything. I don't want to talk about the Knicks, and I don't want to talk about the Lakers because they're both terrible, and who cares? I
agree. Let's end it. We didn't talk about the Kings. Did we already talk about the Kings on a previous podcast?
We didn't. No, we never talked about the Kings. All right, let's do that quickly, and then we'll finish it. Yeah, the Kings.
I guess that's all I got. Ty Corbin is the head coach of the Kings. They're not playing 4-on-5. They did play a lot of small ball last night, but Golden State kind of offers that opportunity. I really thought Ty Corbin was going to play. Like maybe we'd see like 3 possessions of 4-on-5. Josh Smith will sign up to play 4-on-5.
It was the best thing about it is Harala Bob's Twitter feed now that Sacramento has announced they're going to play a faster pace with Ty Corbin. It's really like they're just baiting him. It was like they had a meeting in the Kings office to decide how to bait him the most they could, and this was it. And then you see he's calling plays for the bench. I thought you were playing a faster pace. Point guards are slowing it up and looking over to him. It's like, what's going on? And then Golden State just blows them out of the water with a faster pace. Sacramento is out of its mind. And they're capable of anything. And if you don't think they're trying to figure out a way to trade for Deron Williams and Joe Johnson at the same time, you're lying to yourself. I mean, it's impossible with the cap, but they're capable of anything. They're in the Tyson zone.
If you put yourself in their shoes, you can kind of start talking yourself into Deron Williams, and then you step back and you're like, Darren Williams is the second highest paid point guard in the NBA, and he might be the 15th best point guard in the NBA, maybe 14, 13, 17, and he makes the second highest salary. Like, just think about those two numbers, 2 and 15. You don't get that guy. You say, we can fill the position in other ways and spend that money in other ways and be more efficient at it. Just like, stop, like, you can nitpick the X's and O's and think, oh yeah, he can play with Cousins and like he'd be a third option and blah, blah, blah. Just if he's 2 and 15, that's it. Stop the conversation.
Well, and the other problem with Darren Williams is his contract isn't even up next year.
No.
It's up in 2017. You get 3 years of him.
But that's what I'm saying. You can talk yourself into it because, like, even with that, that's when the cap's going so far up probably that you can take in that contract and still have flexibility. And this, like, you start having this internal monologue and they just stop. Say, no, you don't pay the 15th best point guard the second highest point guard salary. Just avoid it. Just stop. Just hang up the phone. Hang up the phone and do something else.
And going back to what we were talking about with Luck at the beginning of the podcast, if Darren Williams says, you know what, Mark Cuban, I'm in. I want to be a Maverick. How screwed are they? They wouldn't have been able to do anything else. Their team would have been Dirk Nowitzki, Darren Williams, and Brandon Wright.
It is funny. It is funny. Everyone hammered him for not showing up to that meeting because of Shark Tank. And
including myself. That was one of my favorites. I love making fun of him for that. That's great. It all worked out.
Yeah, all worked out. And I guess we'll see what this can be. Interesting couple months heading to the trade deadline. We will have a lot to talk about.
Zach Lowe, enjoy the holidays. Thanks for all your hard work in 2014. I thought you had a career year. Kevin Pelton said it was the best year of your career. He ran some PR writer metrics and was really impressed.
I don't think Kevin actually did that, but I'll take it.
Happy holidays. Say hi to our friends in Toronto. Tell them we do respect their team and we like watching them. And we will talk to you in 2015.
Have fun. Happy holidays to you and yours.
Thank you. And happy holidays to everyone out there. Enjoy the Christmas marathon on ESPN and TNT. I will be at the Warriors-Clippers game, and I am delighted about that. I cannot wait to go to that. I'll talk to you after the holidays. Take care.
So I get to sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
Gotta say, Golick, great call on grabbing Subway for lunch and getting guacamole on our subs.
Told you this new guac really amps up the flavor.
Yep, something adding up things can be great. Guacamole on your sub, a new co-host to replace you.
What was that?
Oh, no, nothing.
Subway now has deliciously rich new guacamole made from ripe Hass avocados with just a hint of garlic, onion, and jalapeno. Discover how new guacamole turns up the flavor on any of your freshly made favorites. Subway, eat fresh.